Hello and welcome back to the channel. It is Mark from Powersonic and Apprentice 121. We are on another Sigenergy install. I'm going to tell you all about it in a minute. It's another very interesting project. But before we get into that, I've got a couple of thank yous. One, for our awesome customers. They have spoilt us absolutely rotten on this one. It seems to be a repeating story, but these guys have taken it even further and they've made us up, or a friend of theirs has made it up these buns. There will be a little clip in here later on, but this is just a little flavour of, we've actually got our pictures on, if you can see that. And there was some with the IMO isolators and the Proteus isolators. It's really nice. When you're working for people who are as kind as that, we realise how lucky we are. And also a big thank you to James, who came to help us on this one as well. And again, we'll feature a bit of him later on in this video. Without any further ado, I'm going to spin you around and show you some of the stuff we've got at play here. And as always, if you're a customer looking for something like this in your home, there'll be a link in the description where you can go off and get in touch with us. We are working all over the UK in no short part due to YouTube, and it would be great to pop a proposal over for you and your system as well. Let's get to it. So as always, we're going to keep focused in on the equipment here, and that is because there's lots of the customer's personal possessions and things, so I'm not going to give you a wide out shot, but this is in a garage area, as you will note from the breeze block and the brick walls. We have got our gateway mounted out here as well, so we've got a sub-main. It's running approximately 13 metres from the meter box that is in the side of the customer's driveway. We'll show you that later on. So it's not an especially long run, and we're going to bring our sub-main down to here, and that then will return to the meter cabinet to then distribute power to all of the house loads, as we've shown before. So in essence, in here we've got our grid input, which is going to come into here, and that is the supply from the main meter tails, and then the house loads or consumer units are connected back through this breaker here. We've got our inverter powered from here, we've got our Tigo tap powered from here, and that will be C6 protected, and we've also got another breaker here which is going to do our EV charge point. Been through this before with this common bus bar. You can see the CTs for the house loads are measured further upstream of all of this, so all of the power demand coming from these breakers is measured just the same as if it was off the house consumer unit. These are reserved for inverters. The purpose of the gateway is to serve 3 of the Sigenergy stacks. Obviously on most domestic residential systems that's unlikely to be required, so we're making use of these for some other things. We've also got the SPD here on the AC side. We are still to put our little linking wire in to the earth terminal and our electrode. That's still to be done. Obviously we've still got the sub-main to bring down here as well. We have at this stage got our AC power in to the inverter, and you can see we've kind of looped out the corner of this 150 by 150 trunking, which we've started to fit on the underside of the gateway. As you can see, we've retained the glands to secure those cables as they enter the gateway, and then we're kind of dropping out of there into our AC isolator. That then comes back out the top to feed into the inverter. Now that is a tight space. You can see we're between 2 pillars, and we've tried to set it just with enough distance for this to grow up, but I mean it's going to be millimetre perfect, as you'll see here as that goes, and there may be some difficulty with access to the handle if it gets especially high. I reckon we can get another couple of modules on there without that being a factor, but it is what it is working within the space. If the customer ends up with a full stack, we can always shuffle the gateway a little bit and perhaps pack this out to be the same depth as the pillar, but for now it's absolutely fine as is. We do have Ethernet running through this garage. There's kind of a garden room that the customer's got with the internet in already. That cable passes through here, so we're going to break into that, pop a little switch in of our own, and then we can have hardwired data for the Sigenergy and the gateway. That is kind of what we've got. This is the staple system we're fitting. There's a slight difference here that this is a 12 kilowatt inverter, so the DNO have granted full export as well, which is unusual, but we're not going to complain. So we've got full 12 kilowatt export from that. Obviously with the batteries being 8 kilowatt hours, the combined output power from the batteries is that 8 kilowatts of power. However, if there's supplementary PV, the inverter can make use of all of that power up to 12 kilowatts into those house loads, or even exporting out to the grid if you're on some of these variable tariffs where it often pays for that to be the case. We've got 2 taps on this system because we've got panels on top of this garage I'm stood within, and we've also got panels on both sides of the house roof. And the way we do that is we bring both of the taps cabling back to this gateway, and then we basically link out from one of the cat cables to the other one, because your last tap needs the resistor in and the intermediary one has these kind of linking wires, so they're daisy chained on one from the other. So in essence, that all of the central wiring comes back to here rather than having those connections up on the roof. It makes sense to us to do that. It just gives you more easy access to them if there's ever a problem. You need to do some investigation and fault finding and stuff. You're not having to get up on the roof to do that. I think that's the gateway pretty much covered. We've got our IMO isolators down here again. These are able to switch 2 strings in one. We've basically got the garage system on this isolator here, which is why its lid's on, because those panels are connected in and wired up. Whereas you can see the house panels aren't presently connected into the isolator, so they're not connected at all. We're still to bring that into here. And again, up in the loft with this one, because the house is separate to the garage, we have popped another DC isolator up there. It made sense to us that if anyone was up there doing sort of maintenance and stuff and they wanted to be sure that they were disconnected from the PV generation, that they've got a point there where they can do it. I know it's an extra set of terminals and terminations, but if you're capable and competent and you wire them up correctly, there's absolutely not a problem having DC isolators in the system. And actually, I think they form a vital part in both maintenance and operation of a PV system. So that's why we've done that. I'll show you a little close-up of these buns actually while we've got those there. You can see those, we've got a few left in the box, but most of them have been eaten by the guys, which is good. Of course, that's what they were for. I will take you now up onto these roofs and show you some of the panels and perhaps cut in a little section of the drone footage. Just before we do that, again, just to say all of the strings, this has got 4 MPPTs in it. They're just behind this panel here. They're all in use for the different orientations we've got on this system. We have also got a data cable that links between the Sigenergy store and the gateway. That's up there in the FE port at the top, and that also joins in with the same port on the Sigenergy store. The data connection comes into the Sigenergy store, and then we have also got a wireless dongle in here, and we've also got a 4G USB stick in here as well. So there's 3 modes of connectivity, if you like. We'll be able to hang this on the Wi-Fi, put it onto Ethernet, and we've also got that 4G connectivity. There's a little light strip here. Once we're commissioned and on, I'll show you that as well. But yeah, that's kind of that in a nutshell. Let's go look at some of these roofs. So here up on the garage, we have got 2 of these panels. It was just too tight to squeeze 3 on in landscape, and there's definitely not room for 3 in portrait, so that was limited by the roof space we have here. There is a little kick on this the end gable here, so it kind of sets it out a little bit. It looks like it's not quite square, but it is, as you can see by the tile line here at the bottom. But it's a little bit deceptive, and that's just the shape of the roof and the building. On the other side is exactly the same, so these are set in the same orientation as the house roof. It's pretty much a north-south split, so we've got that, well, I think it's more actual north-east, south-west again. I'll have to look on the proposal to double check that, but we will get much more generation from these front panels as opposed to the ones on the back of the house. I won't jump over the other side, it's exactly the same. There'll be some drone footage to overlay over here. These are the JA solars, so these are 450 watt bifacial panels. The reason we've got JAs on this is the VOC on them is significantly lower than the Trinas. So with 12 Trinas, we would be overloading the MPPTs on 1 string, whereas with 12 JA, we are within that limit, and that is kind of allowing us to have this size system running in through that inverter. If we'd gone with Trina panels, we'd have been maxing out beyond the MPPT, and we'd have ended up needing 6 strings, which wouldn't have worked with our inverter. But same rating, same performance. These are actually a more expensive panel. You've got the generation on the underside. They have the glass cells that sort of pass light between. Can't really see it when you're on the roof. They look just like a normal single-sided panel, but they do allow for that extra generation. This is on Vanderbalk Ace mounting again. So we've got the new Ace mounting system. Giveaway is the end caps that these now have. They cover the end clamps much better and nicer than the older range. So yeah, that's all in place. These are on portrait orientation, and up on the house is landscape, so we'll have a look at those as well. We've also got the pest fix bird mesh, which for us is absolutely essential, because then you're stopping any critters and birds getting under, and you can see the guys have cut those nicely on the corners as well to make sure nothing's ever getting under there to make a home on the roof. And with the appropriate amount of clips, we often see these systems where they've been a bit shy on the amount of clips that's gone on there, but this has got the required amount, so it's never going to come loose or end up blowing off down someone's garden. So that's kind of the roof in a nutshell. There is obviously the Tigo optimizers under there as well. They are rated to a maximum of 15 amps for the string performance, and that's where it's worth checking with your bifacial panels for the actual currents that are to be anticipated, because you can easily go beyond that with bifacial options, and you need to be doubly careful that you're not going to be causing yourself a problem when these things start generating and there's a bit more current there than the optimizer can handle. So something else to consider in your design. So before these get eaten, just look at these that this wonderful customer has got for us here, some personalised little buns, which are just incredible. See, Matthew's on this one. Company logo. There's all of us together on that one. That is so cool. We've got little DC isolators as well. So that is us wired up. You can see the finished result. We've got our DC isolators tucked underneath there. The one on the left is for the house. The one on the right is for the garage. That's kind of the direction the roofs are in relation to the gateway. We've got our AC isolator. You see our cables all running out the end there to drop down. This will just sail upwards. It's going to be tight next to that gateway, but it is what it is with the space we're working in here. And we've got our stack there, all online, ready to go. See, it's a squeeze. If we did have to shuffle things forward, I think best bet is to set the stack forward with a bit of unistrut and just scale up in front of this pillar here. I think that's going to be the easiest way, and we've left length on those cables behind our stack should we need to do that. The gateway itself, the same as always. I think I explained this earlier in the video, but we've got our grid feed coming in, which brings your meter supply down. We've got our backup loads, which is returned back to the house consumer units. We've got our AC SPD, Tigo hubs powered from in here. We've also got the EV charger powered from in here and the solar battery system. I will show you the EV charger outside in just a second. So this one was a tight squeeze. You can see either side of the garage, there's just nowhere to mount the EV charger, and the customer didn't want it in the garage. Down the side here is the neighbour's property, that's their pathway. So this was the selected option. It does just squeeze on, if you can see there, between that fall pipe. We can't get the cable into the holster because the scaffold pipe's in the way at the minute, but once that's gone, work an absolute treat. We're leaving the cover on the front, the little protective shield here, just till the scaffold's gone. That's all connected into the system, so now if you want to, you can choose to have your excess solar go to the vehicle before the battery. You can even have it go to the grid first if you want. There's all kinds of configuration within the Sigenergy ecosystem should you want to make those changes to get things set how you need, and it's a really useful function in the kit as a whole. And as I said before on other content, they're 7 kilowatt chargers. They do come in 11 kilowatt and 22 kilowatt flavours. If you're lucky enough to have 3-phase, you can now get them tethered and untethered. The untethered ones have just hit the market. I don't think they're out with wholesalers as yet, but imminently if you haven't already seen them in the shops as yet. But Sigenergy is responding to demand there because consumers do want to be in the same ecosystem so they can control that energy flow to where it's needed. So we have the much maligned meter box, and again we had the same challenges here of getting power returned back to the house and from the consumer unit inside. There was a tails isolator switch in here. We've replaced that, so we've got our point of demarcation between the suppliers and the consumers with this main switch here. Also got a fuse leading off down to the sub-main to the gateway, and we've just popped some Henleys down here which connect into these tails which go off to the consumer unit in the house. Our tails coming in, see off the meter, they're wiring off the bottom here, in through the fuse, and then that's returned back through this 5-core steel wire armour to then connect into here. And these are all double insulated. We do have some very poor examples of rag opinion around single insulated cables within these things. However, I don't want to have any basic insulation on show in an enclosure that an ordinary person is going to have access to maybe operate a main switch or inspect and read a meter. It's not ideal, but obviously you're working with what you've got, and you know you can't go putting loads more extra cabinets on people's walls. This customer was conscious enough about the cable route, wanting to keep things as neat and tidy as we possibly could. And this is a perfectly acceptable solution. You can see there's plenty of room here for the meter, plenty of room for the service head, and we've got ample space for what we need. It's all about working with the space we've got to best provide solutions to occupiers and consumers. So back up on the roof, and you can see our panels are now mounted. These are the 440 watt bifacials, and you can see they're on Vanderbalk Ace. It's always a giveaway with the new style of end caps for the Ace system because they cover the clamps a little bit nicer on the end of the rails. You see here the rails are running in the vertical orientation underneath those panels in landscape, and that gives us the full PA rating in terms of the wind loading. We have had the assessment done in terms of the structure of the building to carry the weight of this system. It is always consideration when you've got large arrays going onto roof spaces that you make sure you are covering that off. And we've got our 300mm spacing fall into the gutter as well. When you've got large arrays and that rainfall that can spill across the panels, you want to make sure that that's not going to be dropping over the gutters onto the customers below. And we've got our spacings up the side as well and off the ridge, so we've got lots of ample protection in terms of our wind loading, whilst also maximising this roof space as best as possible in terms of the generation. We was close to being able to potentially get 3 rows of 5 in portrait. However, we would have just been oversailing the ridge, and we don't like to do that in terms of MCS and rules. The last thing you want is your PV array to end up in next door neighbour's garden. So we are also making sure we're doing things in a safe way whilst making absolutely the most use of every drop of space on these roofs. And you can see over on the front of this property, the same. This is with the sun shining on them, and again we've got the Pest Fix bird guard running around the outer edges with the required number of clips to hold that in place, so we're not going to get any rodents, pigeons, wildlife getting under this array, nibbling on any of our cables, damaging the underside of the panels. And this system is going to be sat on top of this house for decades to come, generating lots of renewable power, which is what it's all about. We're trying to set these things up as safely as possible for the long term, and each one of these panels has a Tiger optimizer underneath it linked back to the Tiger CCA, so we are going to get panel by panel level monitoring and data as this system progresses, and any degradation that might form, we'll get to see and know about it before it's even a problem. So we are now off the job site and I'm back at my desk, and this isn't the end of a project. Just when you finish up on site, there is a lot that gets done around all of these as well. So a little segment here that's maybe useful to consumers and other installers who are looking towards getting into solar PV and battery storage. But you've got all of your proposals that you need to do at the outset when you're kind of tendering for these projects, so the customers can see their anticipated generation, how much the system's going to cost, what the likely return period is, although that's always a best guess when we're looking 25 years into the future with some of this. And then there's your applications to the DNO for your G99s, and in my area of Northern Power Grid, they can take the full 45 working days and beyond sometimes. And you're then in that great unknown of wondering what your export limit might or might not be, and all of those questions and worries that come towards us as installers, and also the customers waiting on hearing back around that. And then when these projects are wrapped up, obviously we have the video content that we make alongside our installations, and this one has gone out on YouTube, others don't. They just go and sit with the customers for them to refer back to. I think it's a great way for them to be able to see and understand how their system works if they've forgotten some of the things we've discussed during that handover process. And then there's also the certification of this. So again, there's dealing with the DNOs. So we have to do our commission sheets that get sent back to them as part of the G99 process, so they can sign off on that, allowing the customer to then apply for an export MPAN with their energy provider. And sometimes that can take, again, up to 6 weeks, depending on the DNOs in question. Others are much faster than others. So there's that aspect. There's then obviously the electrical certification. So we're using Modexsoft Electrical OM on this one, where you can give your test results for the equipment that's been installed, make sure they match up with what the design says it should, and that can go into your project file. You've then got your building control notification for the Part P side of things, and your microgeneration certification. And then of course you've got your MCS and insurance-backed warranties, updating however you're doing your QMS manual for your PV systems. So it gets quite complex. And there are arguments out there in industry that, you know, you don't need to do any of that. You can just go to court and argue with your energy provider for a year to try and get your seg payment or your export payments. And for me, that kind of thing is much like, you know, outdoor consumer units, not fitting DC isolators, all of these other things where shortcuts are made and skill levels are lowered. And it's exactly the same with not using the MCS process. I don't understand why anybody would be against that. There's obviously the cost there, and it isn't perfect. There are things in it that are wrong, but at least it's a base standard. It's a well-adopted mechanism to make it quick and effective for your customers to then go and start selling energy back to the grid. And for, what is it, 30 quid plus VAT, I think it's pretty reasonable value overall. Certainly the simplest and easiest way to run a contracting business, because I know none of my customers would be happy to wait a year while I went to court arguing their case to get a seg payment. Seems a bit of a nonsense. I hope that that has been an interesting run through another installation. Sigenergy, again, we're installing these kits week to week all the time now. They're really, really popular, and the inquiries are just building up and up and up for it. I'm starting to see them being distributed in more places, other installers coming online, fitting them, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. We're really proud to have been one of the first in the UK to deliver one of these systems. I think the very first on YouTube, to be fair, with the content that we shared around it, and that video still draws customers towards us today. And if you are a customer looking for one of these in your home, please do get in touch with us. There'll be a link in the description, and it'd be great to put a proposal forward for you to consider. A final thank you again on this video to our awesome customers on this project. You really looked after us through the entire near enough 4-day project, with drinks, food. Those buns and cupcakes are now legendary, and there is a gift coming towards you from IMO, the DC isolator manufacturer. They were really blown away by the cupcake with their product on the front. So I know that they are sending you guys something. And just a massive thank you from me, Matty, Nathan and James for your kindness through the installation. And again, a massive thanks to James for helping us on that project as well. And as always, Matty and Nathan for delivering some incredible work. I think it came out really nice, but let me know what you think in the comments as well. If there's things you would have done differently, any tips or tricks you might have for us, please do drop them in. As always, we are open for that feedback. And otherwise, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.